And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Wednesday, February 13th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, analysis, information you need to know in these perilous times, these times of the white noise of headlines and of news coming at you from the right and from the left and from the center. You either duck or bleed. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight for the new listeners, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's our home base. And we are also simulcast on the Christians United Broadcasting Network. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this tremendous minefield together. Joe, welcome to the studio tonight.
Glad to be here, and been here for half of the day.
Yeah.
And
it's good to see you, actually. We don't usually get to spend that much time together.
No, and it's been an interesting day. Obama has issued an executive order, as we talked about yesterday, the Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity.
You've been all over this today, haven't you?
Yes, I have. And what I have put together, there are a few layers of information I have from this executive order. One, looking at what language is in it and what it could mean, and two, looking at the laws that they cite in here,
right,
and the history and background of those laws. And we're going to definitely get into this tonight, as it is important. I did send you an email with some of the information in there that I compiled on the executive order. But what they have done, what Obama has done, and this has been in the works for a long time,
right,
is pass an executive order or sign an executive order for the Improving Critical Infrastructure of Cybersecurity. Now, there are many ways one could read this. The language in here is very broad and vague. It is, in my opinion, that is done intentionally. And there's nothing in here, when you read it, that really comes out and slaps you in the face, except for one part, and I'll start with this. It has 12 sections, and Section 12, Paragraph D, states, "This order shall be implemented consistent with U.S. international obligations." And that is one common theme in this executive order. And through presidential policy directives, and other laws, they have basically are turning over the internet to the agency, as they say, in Section 11.
All right, but let's be clear on one thing. The title of this is Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Now, this, and I think people really need to understand this, because this new executive order has more sinister qualities than even a Soviet style or a Chinese style. I wouldn't go, but a Soviet style cybersecurity. Just so people understand that it's wow. You've got to understand the concepts about this law, and you've got people have to understand that this executive order has really arm twisting all over it. There's really no voluntary, although it says it's voluntary, there's no voluntary when businesses are in fact repeat players are undergoing supervision of a government agency. Think of it that way. You're under this government agency or government agencies. So this is not really voluntary. So pay very close attention to what Joe has uncovered about this.
Yeah, and what I want to do first is let's go through some of the definitions. The term agency, as listed in Section 11, means an authority of the United States that is an agency under 44 U.S.C. 3502. This is U.S. law.
Right.
And all other than those considered to be independent regulatory agencies are defined under the same 44 U.S.C. 3502(5). Now, the term agency under these definitions means any executive department, military department, government corporation, government-controlled corporation, or other establishment in the executive branch of the government, including the executive office of the president, or any independent regulatory agency,
right,
but does not include the Government Accountability Office or the Federal Elections Commission. And the second part of the term agency, the independent regulatory agencies, means the board of the governors of the Federal Reserve System.
But answerable to who?
Well,
Obama and DHS. Now, DHS figures prominently in this, right?
Oh, yes, they do. They are. They have basically been handed this executive order hands the power of the internet over to the Department of Homeland Security. And one headline here: as CISPA debate rages again, Obama is already using its powers. Just like most draconian legislation that politicians try to pass, the government has already been using the illegal powers in hopes to justify its actions with the passage of a new law. And it says, see warrantless wiretapping.
Right.
Other, even worse actions like torture and assassinations of Americans without due process are simply kept secret because they know a law for it would never be possible. It was recently announced that the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, or CISPA, will once again be coming up for a vote in the United States Congress. Right. Lawmakers cited increased threats from hackers and cyber espionage as the motivation for its reintroduction.
This is the Hegelian dialectic is what we're talking about here. They created the problem. They've got the solution. The solution is more laws, more oversight. Section 9C of this order requires the Secretary of Homeland Security, along with, as you mentioned, sector-specific agencies, to confidentially notify owners and operators of critical infrastructure. The government has designated them as such. Now, that confidentiality is a secrecy trump card, if you will, played in advance to put the chill on any company, any organization that might think of challenging this designation, the designation as critical infrastructure. So it's, oh boy, this is really threading the needle here, and they couldn't get it through. He couldn't get this through legislation, so he rammed it through in an executive order. You know what, America? Americans wanted a king. You've got a king.
Yes. And the critical infrastructure you mentioned is anything, any systems, assets, whether physical or virtual, so vital to the U.S. that the incapacity or destruction of such systems, assets would have a debilitating impact on security, national economic security, national public health,
right,
or public safety, or any combination of those matters. Section 3, the next section, policy coordination, states guidance, dispute resolution, and periodic in-progress reviews, the functions and programs described and assigned herein shall be provided through the interagency process established in Presidential Policy Directive 1 of February 13th, 2009, Organization of the National Security System. Now, we are going to go through a few things here. One,
not to put you to sleep. We don't want to do that, but you've got to know what this is all about, because Obama made this executive order, but it was embargoed until after the State of the Union. And to me, that, I don't know what that means, but that's got to mean something. Why wait until after the State of the Union to roll this out? But with the presidential, as it's connected to the Presidential Policy Directive 21 and the other references.
PPD 1, correct,
right.
Issued February 13th, 2009, which is organizing the National Security Council, and it is the National Security Council system will be organized as follows. It is the NSC shall be the principal forum for consideration of national security policy issues requiring presidential determination. The foundations, membership, and responsibilities of the National Security Council shall be set forth in the National Security Act of 1947 as amended in this Presidential Policy Directive, which is number 1. Now, Presidential Policy Directive 21 was issued yesterday with the executive order, and I'm not going to read it to you. It's 12 pages. You can find the PDF on the internet, but it is critical infrastructure, security, and resilience. The President Policy Directive on critical infrastructure, security, and resilience advances a national unity of effort to strengthen and maintain secure, functioning, and resilient critical infrastructure. And what they plan to do is through coordinated efforts, interagency collaboration, they say they are going to keep their efforts to maintain and strengthen and secure critical infrastructure, including assets, networks, and systems that are vital to national safety, prosperity, and well-being. And that's their first stated goal, and I find it very hard to believe that they care for anybody's safety, prosperity, or well-being other than their own, as they've showed numerous times through example. What this really is a Department of Homeland Security takeover of the Internet.
That's right.
And one thing I did find very interesting about this is what the one presidential directive from October 2012 is classified. Now, this is giving cyber operations over to the military. From a Washington Post article from November 14th, 2012, the directive establishes a broad and strict set of standards to guide the operations of federal agencies in confronting threats in cyberspace.
And that is the golden nugget to this. What they're saying is they can use, if they feel that the threat is large enough, even though the threat resides in the virtual world of cybersecurity.
I hear distortion. Sound? Guys in the chat? I don't know if you guys heard that.
The folks, am I distorted? Can you hear me? Bad sound.
You
like crazy.
Mute yourself for a sec.
All right, hang on a minute. I got 5 buttons to mute myself.
All right, once you mute yourself.
All right, mute myself. Yeah.
Okay, now he's muted. All right, now is there still distortion? Can you guys hear me clearly? Joe, you are clear. Distortion. Okay. I don't know what is going on with that, but we are good. You are distorted for some reason. Whatever that is, I'm not sure.
All right, folks. How about now? Am I distorted or am I just...
That's coming through clear now.
All right. All right, thanks. Now, the golden nugget in all this is even though the threat might reside in cybersecurity, in the virtual realm, in the virtual world, the military can be dispatched to neutralize the threat, even though the threat is limited to cybersecurity or the threat resides within the internet. So if...
Yeah, I just posted in the chat an article.
It's unbelievable.
Which talks about a secret directive Obama signed in October of last year, that enables the military to act more aggressively to thwart cyber attacks on the nation's web of government and private computer networks.
Right.
The Presidential Policy Directive 20 establishes a broad and strict set of standards to guide operations of federal agencies in confronting threats in cyberspace, according to several U.S. officials who have seen the classified document and are not authorized to speak on the record about it. This new directive is the most extensive White House effort to date to wrestle with what constitutes an offensive and a defensive action in the rapidly evolving world of cyber war and cyber terrorism. Now, they go on to say in an article from a few months earlier in 2012 that not only is the Pentagon getting involved, the Pentagon has proposed that the military cyber specialists be given permission to take action outside its computer network to defend critical U.S. computer systems, a move that officials say would set a significant precedent. The proposal is part of a pending revision of the military's standing rules of engagement. The Secretary of Defense has not decided whether to approve the proposal, but officials said adopting the new rules would be within his authority. Now, they did.
Now, if I can jump in here for a second, okay? Because this, and I don't know how many people have heard about this, but I think this is important because I think now is the right time to talk to people. Look, we use Facebook. We're on Facebook. We use Twitter. Others use whatever, MySpace, Foursquare, different type of social networking. I just want to kind of interject this here because this does kind of play into what you're saying. Raytheon has recently hooked up with the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense with what they call a riot program, which mines social networking data, kind of like Google for spies or a 007 type operation. And here's how they do it, just very briefly. And I could tell you how to throw a monkey wrench into this process. If you're on Facebook, for example, or if you've got a website or anything, if you would upload a photograph, maybe to Facebook. We'll use Facebook as an example, but this works for whatever you might be using. When you take a photograph, whether it's with your telephone or with a digital camera, there is metadata embedded in that photograph that will tell people when they look at the properties of the photograph, what time you took it, where you took it, what you used to take it, whether it was a phone or a camera. It'll give you, or it'll give the person longitude and latitude. It'll give there is so much information embedded in that photograph, which you never see. You will never see. So find a program on the internet, or if you know how to do it yourself, to strip the metadata from the image before you put it on Facebook. That will thwart, for example, this Rayathon riot or rapid information overlay technology. At least it won't make it easy for them. So just kind of I don't know, just kind of a little tidbit. If you think you're under surveillance, this is one way, because we used to do this. We used to take photographs, and we were able to tell when it was taken, what it was taken with, the longitude and latitude of where it was taken, basically the street address where it was taken. So just think about that. That's what I want to say. Go ahead and continue, Joe.
Yeah, I guess what we need to do is just say, what does this executive order on cybersecurity mean for us? And when I say us, I mean our listeners, the average American out there. Well, one, they have set some guidelines and some timelines.
Right.
One, cybersecurity information sharing. Within 120 days of this order, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, along with the Director of the National Intelligence, shall issue instructions consistent with their authorities and with the requirements of this order to ensure a timely production of unclassified reports of cyber threats to the U.S. homeland that identify a specific targeted entity. The instructions shall address the need to protect intelligence and law enforcement sources, methods, operations, and investigations. So, within 120 days, we will see a report of Department of Homeland Security lexicon of their stated cyber enemies, cyber risks. Also, they will be...
And that would be us, too.
Well, see, this is where the language... When I said the language is broad and vague, this is why. Because when you go through what laws they used to put together this executive order, what executive orders and presidential directives they used to put together this executive order, what it goes back to is George Bush and the development of the Department of Homeland Security. And under their plans in 2002 to develop the Department of Homeland Security, they included one of their priorities. It says the Department of Homeland Security will become a federal center of excellence for cybersecurity and provide a focal point for federal outreach to state, local, and non-governmental organizations, including the private sector, academia, and the public. And that is from the National Strategy to Secure Cyberspace.
Well, okay, but just to make sure people understand what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I made this point because this reaches in from protecting critical infrastructure,
right,
into awareness, into intervention, into information sharing, information monitoring, and it also ties into the healthcare, medical information sharing. And what I see them trying to do through this executive order on cybersecurity is get things in place for the implementation of the electronic health records, and to say they have secure means of using, but they have the cybersecurity world under its police now. So now we can have electronic health records, and they won't be vulnerable to hackers. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But now let's look at the flip side of this, because what came out recently, or within the last 12 hours about this as well, when people began analyzing what's taking place, is that specific defense contractors, such as Rayathon, they've developed software that lets the defense contractors, the people behind the computers, create multiple social profiles maintain them simultaneously. So you can actually you can actually post one update, and it would appear that you're using, or it would appear that 10 people or 15 or more are posting that update and hitting against others. It might sound bad.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, don't know what the problem was from yesterday to today, but the sound is distorted.
I'll tell you what I did. I changed some settings. Let me change them back. I thought it was being real
Good job.
professional.
Good job. I think you should understand what the settings are you're changing before you change them.
Yeah, that would be a little too much. But continue while I attempt to fix this.
Yeah, if you can mute yourself for a second. Some quick announcements here. Tomorrow night, we are going to be joined by Tom Horn and Steve Quayle, and that show is going to be on the Exo-Vatican book, also the Petrus Romanus book written by Tom Horn and Chris Putnam, and talking about the events of the Pope resigning. That will be a special show tomorrow night from 9 to midnight. Now tonight, after our show, we will be guests on Lori's Talk News Radio, which is right here on Blog Talk Radio. And that will be from 11 to midnight tonight, directly following our show. And also, Sunday night, we're doing a special 3-hour show from 8 to 11 with Nathan Leal. And we have a lot of interesting things to get into with Mr. Leal as he is writing a new article expanding on something he foresees happening the day after the show, or manifesting the day after the show. So that's going to be very interesting. Tomorrow, Tom Horn. Sunday, Nathan Leal. And then tonight, after the show, Lori's Talk News Radio on Blog Talk Radio from 11 to midnight Eastern Time. And what we'll do is I'll post a link to that in the chat as well. In other news today, the EU and the U.S. are talking the biggest trade deal in world history. The European Union and the United States announced that they are launching talks on a free trade agreement, which, if hammered out, would become the biggest bilateral trade deal ever negotiated. A future deal between the world's two most important economic powers will be a game changer, boasted José Manuel Barroso, President of the European Commission, during a press conference in Brussels on Wednesday. Trade between the EU and the U.S. is worth some $613 billion a year. A free trade deal would be aimed at bringing down the barriers between the two and reducing the import taxes in particular. Current average tariff stands now at 4%, and a further reduction could mean an additional trade volume. Getting rid of the approval process that businesses have to go through in order to sell products on both sides of the Atlantic can help create new jobs on both sides. We know what these trade agreements do, and the last thing they do is create jobs here in America. In fact, they take American jobs, as we've seen with NAFTA, GATT, and other trade deals. They have taken jobs and put them into other nations. They have built up other infrastructures.
All right. Let me try this. Do I sound better or worse?
You sound okay.
I sound all right. Do I sound sober?
In my headphones.
Well, if I can appeal to the people in the chat room, can you hear me and can you tell me if the corrections I just made? Okay, fine. Good, thank you. Good now. All right. Yeah, what I did was I just went back and undid the changes. I guess I was too smart by half there. So, all right. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes. So now we've got new tariffs. Is that what
the EU and the U.S.
Right.
are talking the biggest trade deal in history of the world, or in world history.
All right.
It will be a comprehensive agreement going beyond tariffs by integrating markets and removing barriers.
Well, yeah.
Estimated that this agreement is up and running. The European economy will get a stimulus of 0.5% of our GDP, which translates into tens of billions of euros every year, and tens of thousands of new jobs, Mr. Barroso added. Obama hailed the talks in his annual address to Congress last night at a State of the Union address, saying a free trade deal would boost Americans' exports, support American jobs, and level the playing field in the growing markets of Asia. Well, Mr. Obama, I have a question for you. Yeah. The growing markets of Asia are a direct result of your continuation of Bush and globalist policies, treaties, and these trading packages they've put together. That's bad sound. Yeah. I mean, it just sounds horrible. It sounds distorted. So I don't know if you want to try and use the landline. No, it's awful. All right. And thanks, guys, for hanging on with us during these sound issues. We are using our low-tech equipment tonight, as our high-tech equipment usually results in sound problems. But we wanted to see what it would be like to use just a regular headset for Skype. And his worked fine last night. Ours worked fine last night. But tonight it's not doing so well. While you fix your audio problems, I'm going to go to an audio clip of Rand Paul. The U.S. is dangerously close to insolvency.
And Senator Rand Paul, giving the Tea Party's response to the State of the Union, offered a surprising yet simple solution to America's debt problems: common sense.
Parties will have to agree to cut. We have to work together, or we'll never fix our fiscal mess. Bipartisanship is not what is missing in Washington. Common sense is. Trillion-dollar deficits hurt us all. Printing more money just feeds the never-ending appetite for spending, and it hurts us all.
Joining us now, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Thank you for being with us, Senator. I'm going to start you off with a chance to mince your own Mark Twain quote. I kind of had the feeling that maybe the Tea Party had kind of fizzled and was on the way to dying. What do you say about that?
Well, the Tea Party's been out there for a couple of reasons. I think we're equal parts chastisement to both parties. And both parties need to learn that we have to cut spending and that we have to give up on our sacred cows. But I was particularly insulted by the president last night saying that he's cut the deficit by $2 trillion. What planet does he live on? So he added $6 trillion to debt. What did he do? Because he didn't add $8 trillion, he saved us $2 trillion? It's absurd. I can't believe more people don't challenge him on this.
Yes, I see. Now, to your credit, you attack both parties as being part of this spending problem. But in terms of actually trying to get something done inside the Senate, are you offending the Republican colleagues that you need to work with to try to reach some compromises with the Dems?
Not necessarily. I think if you talk to Republicans, they'll acknowledge that during the Bush years, there were a lot of new federal programs added. But right now, it's gone up exponentially, and we have to address the problems because we're getting dangerously close to a point of insolvency. So I think most of my colleagues are with me on this, that we do have to cut spending. We do have to get started on this. So I don't think you'll find a lot of disagreement with my colleagues on that. Yeah, the startling thing is when we talk about cutting the deficit, they're never talking about eliminating it. They're going to continue to spend more than they take in every year. They just want to make that overspend a little smaller. Now, you say that Congress is debating the wrong things. Explain, please. Well, a lot of times we're talking about slowing down the rate of growth of government, and that's all of these things. The sequester, that everybody's like pulling their hair out thinking it'll be a disaster. The sequester doesn't even cut any spending. The sequester slows down the rate of growth, but government will still grow by nearly $8 trillion, $7 to $8 trillion over 10 years of growth of government with the sequester. The sequester is not even enough to stave off another credit downgrade, which I think we're going to get, unless we really, truly start balancing our budget.
Yeah, let's remember that credit downgrade had absolutely no impact to the downside for us. A 10-year Treasury is actually lower now than they were before the downgrade, but they should have gone up. Now, in the meltdown of 1937, we were recovering from the Great Depression, and what happened is government got religion too soon on spending and deficits and worrying about it, and that made business pull back. That made stocks plunge 50%. Is there any chance that we got religion too soon on spending now? We've talked about it so much that it's hurting business confidence.
I don't think we've gotten any religion on spending. We haven't cut any spending. We're not in danger of doing anything through the spending side that would hurt the economy. That's an old Keynesian argument that government spending somehow is increasing the wealth of the country. It's an illusion. It causes malinvestment. The money gets placed into things that government chooses but not consumers would want. So, no, I don't accept that at all, that reducing government spending would in any way hurt the economy. I think it would help the economy. Can you imagine what the stock market would do today if we were to say we're going to fix the entitlements permanently? I think stock market would rally to that.
We'd be up to exactly where we should be finally, and we're on the way, I hope. Thanks very much for being with us today, Senator Rand Paul.
And there was Rand Paul talking about the U.S. being insolvent. In other news in the economy today...
Wait, before you switch gears, let me try.
No.
Come on.
It's bad.
How do I sound in the gyro?
You sound like...
Distorted.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So if you hear a 9mm sound of a 9mm going off, you know it's going to be a computer that's going to go down. Let's see, distorted again. You're still distorted? Yeah. Okay. All right. Joe, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go offline and come back online. So just connect me when I come back on. Handle for about 5 minutes. We'll catch on the other side here.
Okay. We can do that. All right. Sorry about that little inconvenience. I think... I don't know what it is. It could be Skype, could be Blog Talk, could be my dad's voice distorting the sound so much that it is ruining the sound. No, I'm just kidding. No, going off of what Rand Paul said, there is a Washington blog article, Top Economic Advisors Forecast War and Unrest. And it goes on to say, we are already at war in numerous countries all over the world, but the top economic advisors warn that economic factors could lead to a new world war. Trillions of dollars of debt will be restructured, and millions of financially prudent savers will lose large percentages of their real purchasing power at exactly the wrong time in their lives. Again, the world will not end, but the social fabric of the nations will be stretched and, in some cases, torn. Sadly, looking back through economic history, all too often, war is the manifestation of simple economic entropy played at its logical conclusion. We believe that war is an inevitable consequence of the current global economic situation. And I'll post a link in the chat room for those of you who are in there. But it goes on. Larry Eldenson wrote in an email to subscribers entitled, What the Cycles of War Are Saying for 2013, which states, since the 1980s, I've been studying the so-called cycles of war, the natural rhythms of predisposed societies to descend into chaos, into hatred, into civil and even international war. I am certainly not the first person to examine these very distinctive patterns in history. There have been many before me, notably Raymond Wheeler, who published the most authoritative chronicle of war ever, covering a period of 2,600 years of data. However, there are very few people who are willing to even discuss the issue right now, and based on what I'm seeing, the implications could be absolutely huge in 2013. Former Goldman Sachs technical analyst Charles Neer, who has made some big accurate calls and counts major hedge funds, banks, brokerage houses, and high net worth individuals as clients, say there will be a major war starting at the end of 2012 to 2013, which will drive the Dow down to $5,000. Veteran investor advisor James Dines forecasts a war it will be the same as the World War I and II starting in the Middle East. A Noral Rubinin has warned of war with Iran, and it goes on from there. And all we keep hearing about, war, North Korea launching missiles, war with Israel and Iran, war, chaos, unrest. The article ends with saying that the countries and the actions, the recent wars we have recently been about, are bringing all the countries into the fold of the Western central banking. Many warn of unrest. Numerous economic organizations and economists also warn of crash-induced unrest, including the head of the World Trade Organization, the head of the International Monetary Fund, the head of the World Bank, the leading economist historian Niall Ferguson, and leading economist John Williams are among those. Also Mark Faber. He is saying that the American government will start new wars in response to the economic crisis. The next thing the government will do to distract the attention of the people on bad economic conditions is they will start a war somewhere. If the global economy doesn't recover, people go to war. And he is right. They do go to war, and it is a distraction, and so is really the economy a distraction. I had a lengthy conversation today, a very interesting conversation, talking with somebody about what is happening to our world, what is happening with the news, with time, with what we're seeing all around us. And more, I come to the conclusion that whether an economic threat or warning of economic chaos, a threat or warning of imminent war, the Pope resigning, I mean, any story that grips the headlines, this Dorner guy, which there are some things we're going to have to get into with this, do distract us from what is important. We need to constantly and be very vigilant about our spiritual health. Our foundation has to be as solid as a rock. And we cannot let any headline take us out of that zone of our comfort in our faith or of our faith. It cannot move us one way or another. It cannot shake the belief and trust we have in the Lord that He will be looking out for us. And a lot of times we see these headlines that are shocking at times. They are sad, frustrating. They lack common sense. But we need to remove ourselves from the emotional aspect of what we feel when we see these headlines. Because there's going to come a time where we might find ourselves in a situation where acting on our emotions is going to be the last thing we would want to do. And because when we act on our emotions, it is not the behavior you would normally choose to carry out in a situation where you're not stressed. It would be like a stress-induced situation, and the problems that will arise from that. I mean, look at the LAPD officers' reaction to this Dorner on the run. Look at the innocent people that they shot up. 2 newspaper women two women that were delivering newspaper in a truck that did not even match the color nor the make or model. Several police just opened fire on the back of this truck, shooting both women. They survived. And in a second case, they shot a man after letting him drive off. Those actions are impulsive. That is where the emotions come in. When we're acting on our emotions, we're not thinking clearly. We're not grounded. And the Lord will help us with that. Emotions are things like fear. We go through these all the time in our daily lives. We need to learn how to rein these in. We need to learn how to be under more control. The fight or flight mechanism we have built into our body. When a situation arises, whether it is a fist fight, engaging somebody in combat, if you've been in the military, if you're a police officer, engaging somebody, or any dangerous situation, if you're in a burglary, a car accident, your body has natural responses and defense mechanisms to help you with these, like slow motion, to help you with whatever situation you find yourself in. These defense mechanisms can work to your benefit or, in some cases, not to your benefit. One of the things an example we were using is civil unrest. No order, no police anywhere. Maybe a month in to a situation where, say, you've been in an area with no electricity or no stores open, no gas, and it's been a month. You're tired, you're cold, you're on your own. You're just trying to survive. And as we see time is getting shorter, as we see news events speeding up, as we see big things happening, we're going to see it is becoming more and more likely that there will be some of us, if not all of us, finding ourselves in situations that we never imagined we would be in. The end of America, the civil unrest, race wars, whatever you think or whatever looks like could happen, there will come a time that we will be facing some sort of threat that we probably don't know how to deal with, a situation we don't want to be in. And I guess the bottom line is we need to pray that the Lord guide us in our ways in the safe, calm times and in the turbulent times and chaotic times. We need to have that spiritual armor on all the time. And we need to have our faith unwavering at all times, in the toughest situations and in the easiest of situations, in the smallest of decisions and the biggest decisions. And that is the one thing that I took away from my conversation and some Bible reading I was doing earlier. We have a tough road ahead of us. Things are not going to be easy. This nation has turned away from God. Not only that, outlawed it in everything that is public. We have embraced all that is wrong in the world, a society of materialistic, self-serving, selfish, arrogant. I could go on listing these character flaws so many of us have or have had. And the problem is people aren't turning away from those bad behaviors. Instead, this nation is embracing them. We are living in a fabricated reality, and that reality has been fed to us by the TV, by the music, by the movies. The culture has been created for us. Think back how people lived 200 years ago. You had families, maybe a mother, a husband and wife with 10 kids, and one of their parents or both of their parents would live in a 2-room house. They'd take care of each other from life to death, worrying only about what work needed to be done to help the family as a whole, as one. The family worked as one toward a common goal. I mean, kids would not go to school, instead work to make sure that family had food on the table, had their bills paid for. Today we live in a society where, with all our electronic devices, with all the distractions that are in our lives, we don't even have to interact with people to interact with people. Electronically, through the computers and Facebook, we can interact with people virtually for the rest of, however long we have this capability without even going outside. And that is not healthy. We need that face-to-face with our family and our friends. We need to step away from our TVs, in my case, my computer. We need to be out there helping people in whatever it is we can do to help people with. Just saying hi to somebody, shoveling your neighbor's sidewalk. We need to be more people person. We have to be reaching out to each other, uplifting each other, making sure there are things in your family that are right, to where you don't have cousins or aunts that are going hungry, and you don't know because you don't communicate with them. You shouldn't have neighbors that don't have food to eat if you have the ability and the means to help them out in tough situations. The unity that everyone is looking for could be achieved only if the people are willing to do more than talk about it. And it's just something that has been bothering me a lot, to see it in households, to see it even in our listenership. Some people want to point out all of the things they see wrong with something. People always want to change each other. We need to, and changing each other isn't a bad thing, trying to change each other, as long as we're doing it in a kind way and we're looking to change other people's bad behaviors, or what friends do. Hey buddy, I see you're drinking too much these days. It's not good for you. That's what friends do for each other. That's what family does. They tell you the truth. You might not like the truth because it might put you in a bad light, or the way you feel about what you're doing might not think it's wrong. But we need the church body to become more Jesus-like, to become more loving, to become more forgiving. Because as it says in the Bible, you have to love not only your brothers, but your enemies as well. Because if you don't, what better are you than a publican, as it says in the Bible? We can't walk after our own lusts. We have to want to do the will of the Lord each and every day, and that's a conscious decision we have to make each and every single day. And while we're coming up on the break here, the first hour, we're going to get my dad hooked back up here. But really, seek the Lord for answers in all things. It says, if you knock, He will answer. And I can personally state, I know that to be true in my case. If you work towards something in your personal life, if you want to fix something about yourself, a character defect, something I'm working on is anger. A year ago, I would read an article like I'm about to read, and be very angry, and maybe I'd yell. You could go back to previous broadcasts and hear it, the frustration. But today I feel different, and that's something through prayer I've been able to work on. And the Lord has answered the prayer and helped. And it's not something that happens overnight, but I can honestly say that He has worked in my life in many different areas in ways that I never thought I could be fixed in such a way. And it's hard to explain in words, but you have to experience it for yourself. But before the break, I'm going to hit this story here, and then we're going to try to get my father back hooked in with some good quality sound. Hypocrisy. The U.S. arms Al-Qaeda in Syria. Now, the Al-Qaeda in Syria are slaughtering civilians in Afghanistan. The AFP has reported that a recent NATO airstrike in Afghanistan has killed over 10 civilians. An all too familiar headline glossed over by the Western media in an exercise of both depravity and hypocrisy. RT's article, NATO airstrike kills 10 Afghan civilians, mostly women and children, notes in particular that up to 11,864 civilians were killed in Afghanistan between 2007 and 2011, and that civilian deaths before 2007 were not even tracked by the UN. Such facts reveal alarming hypocrisy, as the United Nations almost daily inflated tallies of civilian deaths elsewhere, in particular in nations like Libya, Syria, and Western interests, where Western interests have been heavily involved in regime change and in dire need of manipulating public perception worldwide. You hear that last part? In dire need of manipulating public perception worldwide. The United Nations had in fact pieced together a dubious report crafted from witness accounts compiled not in Syria or even beyond its borders in a refugee camp, but instead in Geneva by witnesses supplied by the so-called Syrian opposition. Just imagine some of the corporate members of the U.S.-Qatar Business Council, whose president just so happens to sit on the same board of directors of the Middle East Policy Center as Karen Absurd, co-author of one of the many conveniently timed UN Human Rights Council reports on Syria. Worse yet, the UN report was co-authored by Karen Koning Abzad, a director of the U.S. Washington-based corporate think tank Middle East Policy Council. Its board of directors includes Exxon men, CIA agents, representatives of the Saudi bin Laden Group, the Osama bin Laden's family business, former ambassador to Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar, U.S. military and government representatives, and even the president of the U.S.-Qatar Business Council, which includes among its memberships Al Jazeera, Chevron, Exxon, Raytheon, and also Boeing. In other words, the very underwriters of the armed militancy that is consuming Syria are sitting along the head of the UN Commission, producing the reports portraying the Syrian government as guilty of war crimes against humanity. The hypocrisy does not end there. The pretense the U.S. and NATO have used for over a decade to occupy, subjugate, and slaughter the people in Afghanistan in a conflict increasingly creepy over both Afghanistan borders with Pakistan and Iran is supposedly to fight terrorism. Western interests have been allowed to fight this war on terrorism with impunity, and even without UN monitoring it for years. But is there really a war on terrorism going on in Afghanistan? It seems like there is an increase in opium production. 10, 12 times as much as it was before the U.S. intervened there. But it doesn't end there. The U.S. in particular saw the rise of Al-Qaeda terror regime, terror emirate Benghazi, even having a U.S. ambassador slain there by the very terrorists it had armed, funded, and trained, provided air support for, and thrust into power. The same terrorists have been documented extensively as spearheading the invasion of the northern Syria, via NATO Turkey member. And we're going to go to break. I'm going to end there, and I'll post this in the chat room. It is an excellent article, and it points out a lot of the hypocrisy we see going on in the Middle East, being portrayed by the United States, funded by the United States, in bringing about regime change in the name of humanitarianism. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday, February 13th, 2013. When we come back to hour number 2, I'll have my dad right back on the line as I see him back up on his computer. Be right back. Short message. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world.
Are we muted?
Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I wonder if this sounds any better, folks. Can you hear me? Does this sound better? Do I have? Doug is clear. Hey, I think I might have fixed the problem. I've got to tell you, I've got to keep my mitts off of things I don't understand. And, we need like teenagers in here, because when you change settings, and then forget what you change, it just changes the complexion of everything. So I apologize for that. That was my fault completely. But welcome back to another program for the second hour of this show tonight. We've got a lot more things to get into, and I want to thank you, Joe, for carrying the load there as I was trying to figure out what I did wrong, and then I had a reboot, but we've got so many tremendous stories so many tremendous items to get into. This entire week has been filled with white noise, with different headlines, different news pieces. You had the situation, Waco Light, if you will, in California. You had the Pope's resignation. Now, what surprised me? I was really waiting for a drone strike in Southern California. for conditioning purposes of the media to take that man out.
Well, I have news for you, and maybe this is where you're going.
Okay.
The FAA officials have promised us there are no armed drones in the U.S. That's from the Washington Times. All
right. Well, that's refreshing to know. So the 30,000 plus drones and all of the areas from which they're launched, they're all surveillance drones. So that makes me feel much better that none of them are armed or have the capabilities of being armed, right? No. I don't believe that for a moment. And look, I can I prove it? Of course not. But folks, I'm just telling you, watch. Just watch, because at some point in the future, we are going to get hit, or there's going to be a drone strike via DHS in the desert to take out a terrorist that was going to take out one of the cities. And all that's going to be left there is just bits, pieces, nothing to really assemble, reassemble, or any type of forensic evidence. And that's to condition the American people about what's taking place. And I talked to my intelligence source today, and really it was good to talk with him, because I'm trying to figure out really what's the most important thing, what's going on. And I asked him, I said, what do you make of the Vatican, for example, Benedict XVI resigning, and based on his information. And I think some of it was just his gut feeling was, or is, the Vatican, just like America, is a captured operation. And I think we have to look at it that way. America is a captured operation, as I have said many times before. The enemy is within, the enemy is in control. And I think that in the case of the Vatican, I think that there are, for example, Alex+Jones. Remember when he was on Piers Morgan, and he was accused of saying, well, the government was behind 9/11. Well, later on, he cleared it up, or in fact, he might have, I believe he said, while on Piers Morgan, criminal elements within the government or associated with the government. And that's the same thing we have with the Vatican. And that's the same thing we have with any organization man is involved in. You've got criminal elements. So it's not, I'm certainly not, taking the Vatican to task. I'm taking the criminal elements that have seeped inside that organization, much like the United States. And, God does give us what we ask for, sometimes to our detriment, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember the Jews who wandered in the desert for, 40 years?
Yep.
Unnecessary. But they failed to follow the instructions. They were being fed manna for 40 days, because 40 days was, and by the way, manna, the food of the angels, but 40 days is what was expected had they followed instructions to for them to be in the desert. Well, they refused to do what God told them to do, and that 40 days turned out to be 40 years, and they demanded meat, for example, and in that demand for meat, they ate crow, and so they got their meat, but you can't digest crow, and but yet they got what they asked for. In America, well, we wanted a king. Basically, the majority of the people wanted a king, or wanted a babysitter, or wanted something for nothing, wanted the health care, wanted all of these things, free money, easy life, whatever. I don't have to work for it. We got what we wanted, and I say we, not meaning you or I necessarily, but as a country. And instead of asking for the correct things, Americans demanded the wrong things. And look what we have. Look where we're at. And the other aspect of this is and I think that this is important for people to really understand, is we are going to see multiple things happen here very quickly. And Joe, you touched on this when I was indisposed, I guess. We have to be prepared for it, mentally and emotionally and spiritually prepared for it. And we cannot allow our emotions to guide our decision-making process when everything comes down and collapses. Right?
That's right.
All right. So what we have to do is get our mind straight, get our head straight, understand where our strength comes from, and we have to expect some serious consequences or some serious events taking place here. I would say anytime between now and the beginning of October. Am I stretching that time frame out? No, not really. Look, I don't know when things are going to happen. I don't know when the dollar is going to collapse. I don't know when the hostilities are going to break out in the Middle East. No one knows that. Well, few people know that. Maybe 300 on the planet. The 300 or 400 or 500 or 1,000 that run the planet. But we certainly don't know when. But we know Department of Homeland Security is gearing up for something. We know that this government is gearing up for something. We know that the American people are being conditioned for something big to happen. So when it does happen, we have to be emotionally ready, spiritually ready, mentally prepared, because people that people within your family that have said, you know what, you're just fear mongering, or you're just you're spreading hype. It's always the sky is falling with you. You could never take one incident or one thing. You think everything's a conspiracy. You just can't take everything at face value. And normally, things aren't all conspiracies. But how do you tell the difference? Well, it's difficult. But when you talk about the monetary collapse, this is orchestrated. When you talk about the DHS and the tyrannical approach by DHS, this is orchestrated. This is a conspiracy by definition, but you have to understand, and I just want to segue from what Joe said, you're going to have to be answering questions to people who are going to come to you and say, okay, tell me now what's going on. And I do believe, as I said before, that's your position. You were born for this moment. So keep a clear mind, a clear head, be spiritually correct, be mentally prepared. And you know, it's Joe and I were talking before the program, just to give this a little bit of real life scenario. You know, those people, those of you listening to this program who have never encountered a dead body or somebody who has passed away, and I'm talking about like on the street, or never have seen the most horrendous car accident where you've got ugly things everywhere. It's an insult, an abrupt insult to your mind, to your mental state. It might keep you up for days. I mean, I remember the first autopsy I attended. I got to tell you something. I did not eat for a couple of days after that. And it was seared in my mind. The image was seared in my mind. And I remember the first gory accident scene and the first shooting and the bad things. And see, if you're not mentally prepared, or if for example, we send our young children out to war, young men and women overseas to war, and they're shooting at people and killing people as if this is a video game. Well, what happens in real life? What happens when you see the results of that not so much a video game? What happens when you see the carnage from from a huge incident, whatever it might be? Are you going to be mentally prepared for it? Probably not.
Yeah.
But you can seek strength in your spirit, in the hopes that your the mental assault or the assault on your faculties will not be that great, and you will be allowed to progress, or you will be able to progress in whatever it is you need to do at that point. And I just want to bring that up because I think it's so important, because we were talking about it before the show, and it's not fun to think about. But don't forget, you're going to be the one listening to this broadcast. You're going to be the one that your family members are going to go to and say, "Hey, give me some information. Help me. Help us. Let us know. Tell us what's going on." But I think that's extremely important, and I think too, as we see. And by the way, along with all of the events we're seeing right now, I think we're being brainwashed every day to believe lies. People choose darkness over light. People have chosen darkness over light in some cases. I just think that we really have to, as you said too, we have to use discernment, and we have to get. And I think a lot of us are responsible for not being diligent by getting information for ourselves too. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be very diligent. And as teachers, the responsibility is great. Think about that too. Think about that doctor at that prayer breakfast at in Inauguration Day, where he really, for 29 minutes, he really gave a phenomenal speech.
Yeah.
He was doing his job.
I mean, I played that whole speech on air. It was such a fantastic, well thought out sermon he gave, and what he said was so true, and he did it not in a way that was, taking cheap shots. He wasn't bringing down or calling out anybody in particular. He was making a point about society. He was making a point about policies, about how our system of government has turned into everything that it has historically fought against, how the promises of the now Obama administration are not the way.
He was talking about things that were once right, now wrong, or once wrong, now right type thing, and he gave so many excellent examples. And folks, I think if I could just for one more minute interject this, because I got an email today. And you might have seen this email. You might have gotten this email because I'm sure it's making the rounds. But people want to think everything is fine. For example, Germany, they want to repatriate their gold from France and America. And remember back in 1971, what happened on August 15th, 1971, when France asked for their gold back. What Nixon did was took us off the gold standard, basically put the kibosh on that request, and came on television and said, "Oh, this is because to protect our dollar from speculators," when in fact it was nothing of the sort. And of course, the biggest complaint at that time, on August 15th, 1971, that Sunday, the biggest complaint there was what? They interrupted the television show Bonanza or Ponderosa, whatever the show was. But see, here's the thing. Everyone's walking around and saying, or the television is reporting, everything's fine. And now we're looking at...
No, it's not fine. We're recovering.
Well,
we're getting
okay.
better. We are becoming a greater nation by embracing homosexuality and abortion. We have become a more efficient, and we have, the government has brought the economy back together, brought the jobs back together, the recovery, when they have spent amounts of money we couldn't even begin to fathom, amounts of money that could take care of the whole population of the earth, for as long as they're alive. Okay.
Well, think about this. I mean, do people really believe? And no one in the industry, the financial industry, believes that Fort Knox or the Fed has the gold it claims to have, but because there's never been an independent audit. But hey, look, they're impeccable institutions, so they wouldn't cheat. So everything's fine there. But China, think about this: China has overtaken America as the number one trade partner in the world. Now we're number two. Now, ordinarily, it would signify that America's industry is just turning to dust. But then again, people say everything's fine. Hey, how about the death of the petrodollar in September? More and more traders are using the Chinese currency than the dollar, and the Federal Reserve Bank is buying over 90% of the U.S. Treasuries. Now, that would indicate that the purchasing power of our dollar and even its existence are in question. But you know what? Don't tell that to your sister-in-law, because she's going to tell you what? Everything is fine. Because I can go out and buy a 48-inch flat-screen television. Everything's fine. See, central banks, and these are all central banks, they're electronically printing currency. I mean, for crying out loud, to the moon, in order to compete in export markets. And folks, you're hearing the rumbles, what? Of a currency war. Currency wars are a prelude to trade wars, and trade wars are a prelude to shooting wars. That's what Gerald Celente says, because that is historically accurate. But see, ask your brother-in-law, the guy who knows everything, and who would say something to the effect of, well, hey, you know what, if or you can even ask Tom Hartman from Democracy Now!, if the printing of money would cause inflation, then that TARP money would have caused massive inflation. Why didn't it? See, it doesn't. So we can print money now. In fact, we can even make $1 trillion coin. Okay, yeah. Well, look, shadow stats. The federal government is going to spend over $10 trillion this year, much of it for bribes, for votes, whereas the entire GDP is only $15 trillion and falling. Yeah, but everything is fine. And see, Western Europe is just on fire with revolts, and people are really upset with their governments. Sadly, they're not revolting over any loss of freedom and economic power. They're revolting. You know why? Because their governments won't rob their kids, the unborn, the people down the line, to pay for the freebies that they want right this minute. And that's why they're revolting, see? And that's what we're looking at here in America, or will be looking at in America. We have sold our children into financial slavery, and every one of those despicable human beings that walked down that aisle yesterday for that State of the Union, every single one of those people are traitors to the American public, to you, to me, and worse, to your kids and to your grandkids, because they have sold us out to the bankers, to the central bankers. Every American is now born with $700,000 of debt, thanks to these progressive, socialist, Marxist, Keynesian, if you want to call it that, programs. Thank you, Ben Bernanke. Thank you, Geithner. This is a captured nation. So, you work 30 to 40 years to pay off someone else's debt. But everything's fine. Everything's fine. And, if it's not, just ask what's important to Michael Bloomberg. 32-ounce sodas. Smoking in public parks. Yeah. Everything is fine because, see, none of these problems are reported by the mainstream news media. And if it's not, or if it was really important, it would be on the news. You'd be hearing it from the people with the sticks up their, what's on ABC, NBC, and CBS. But this, we're not hearing anything because you know why? Just ask your brother-in-law. It's all fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
So I'll get off my soapbox. But the economy is going to take a dive. And well, wait, it's fine because gold hasn't really risen and silver hasn't risen. So everything must be fine. But do you realize the manipulation in the markets for gold and silver? And they can only do that for so long. And by the way, if you're in Houston, they're taking your fingerprints and pictures if you're selling gold because they want to know where the gold is and who you're selling it to. And they want to make sure, of course, you're not a fraudster. So if you're selling and buying, now the buying is there's pending laws for that, but the selling part is there now. But see, it's fine. We're okay. So the next time you get into a discussion with your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, your mom, your dad, whatever, your son-in-law, just have patience with them and, give them figures. Give them figures. Send them to Shadow Stats, for example, for the real figures, the real unemployment rate. If we would measure it in 1982 stats, it would be 13.6%. So I just wanted to kind of go off on that a little bit because it was on my mind, and since Joe hogged up the last half hour, I thought I'd hog up the next this 15 minutes or this part.
No, it's good.
But this is where we're at, and see.
And what you're speaking to, take it a step further. Those people, not only who have not been preparing in the spiritual, who have not been walking after things in the spirit, to the people who take things for granted. I mean, we all take things for granted,
certainly,
the way where we live. And we talk about what
not only where we live, but how we live,
and that's most importantly. So when we see or experience these things that are going to come upon the earth, that are going to come upon our nation, the chaos, when we don't have electricity, when we don't have running water, when we don't have a toilet, remember the times when we did and didn't think twice about it. We're not thankful for that. And maybe, not being thankful for it sounds silly, Why should I be thankful for a toilet? Well,
but
half
you should.
of the world, really doesn't have that. Or a lot of the world is in such poverty that things we take for granted are things that so many billions of people would love to enjoy for one day. Okay? So when we're thinking and praying about what we can do better, what we can do to help others be better, we always have to remember what we have. And we can't be ungrateful, unhappy. We can't be complainers. And I'll fall into that category 9 times out of 10, complaining about things that, and the best way it's put, I got a flat tire. Well, at least you have a car.
That's right. And we have to start thinking like that because when things get bad, when we see things that are taking place in Greece and Europe coming to America, we have to remember that we're still the richest country. We still have more than any other country in the world. I mean,
right.
We really do. So be thankful for what we have. And by the way, take care of what you have. And while I'm on this, too, and while you're on this, how are your preparations coming, ladies and gentlemen. Very concerned because things are happening rapidly. Please make sure, even if you go to the store tomorrow, if Thursday is your shopping day and you go to the store, buy a couple extra cans of whatever, something you're going to eat that you're not going to, you're not going to let lie around, and put it in your pantry, even if it's a couple of dollars. And soon, after a number of weeks, you're going to see a big difference. Put it aside. Because we have to do this. We have to do it now. We have to start now. You don't have to go out and buy freeze-dried food and whatever kind of food, exotic food. But you can certainly buy the food. And think about this too. And this is just something I was talking to someone the other day who doesn't smoke and he doesn't drink, but he bought both cigarettes and liquor. And I said, why did you do that? Well, good barter items to have in the event everything collapses. Because people will still smoke and they'll still drink. Especially drink, by the way. So it's good to barter. Hey, bottle of what? Crown Royal or whatever, Maker's Mark, or I'm trying to think of what's out there. For that cow, or for that side of beef, or for that bag of rice. Think in terms like that too. Put that aside. Put those aside as well. Too. I just wanted to.
No, yeah.
To remind everyone about that.
No, and the reason I touched on gratitude and the importance of realizing what we have. The old saying goes, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And whether you said, tomorrow or in 10 years from now, we're going to see terrible times here in this nation.
Right.
Because what they have done through quantitative easing, through the manipulation of society, what we have done through being late to the party, not understanding, not being there to try to fix things sooner, not being a voice of truth, earlier in the game. We've also brought this upon ourselves by not paying attention. And I'm not blaming, I'm blaming us as a society.
Right.
We are now, 23% of America is illiterate. Okay?
Right.
23%.
Well, functionally illiterate, which people might say, well, what's the difference? But just to be technically correct, not functionally illiterate, by the standards in which they measure the 23%. I think functional illiteracy is somewhere in the teens, but just to be accurate.
Think about this. We are one of the richest nations still. We have this illusion of freedom. We have the ability to go out and learn, better ourselves, and we have this many people who can't, do things, read, who can't, fill out a job application, who can't better themselves or won't better themselves. Now, those of you out there who have struggled your whole life and worked as hard as you could, taking jobs that you just hated to put food on the table, and then you have other people who expect things to be handed to them. Okay? Now, when all chaos erupts in this country, the ones who expected everything to be handed to them are going to be the ones coming after those who have things.
Right.
While the ones who have things, especially the ones in Christ, will be looking to help those who don't have things. But it's not going to work because there's going to be too much lust for earthly goods such as food and water, these things that we all take for granted today. And I keep saying that because I want people to understand, and I want to continue every day to be thankful for every meal I have on my table, to be thankful for every day I have with my family,
right? To
be thankful for every opportunity I have to continue to learn and to grow in the Lord, because that opportunity will be removed at some point in time.
We all have to get to that point, and we all have to remember this and stick with it, because this is as much a much a spiritual battle as it is a practical battle, a real battle here on Earth. We have to realize that we are in the end times spiritual battle. I believe it to be the end times. When I say end times, I mean that's a season. That's an area. You know, I don't know when the end times are specifically, but I do know the times, and I have to suspect that the times are short. So your spiritual health and what you're saying, Joe, I think people need to understand. I think people need to stick with that. Yeah,
and it's just frustrating and troubling at the same time. We see stories like this. Pentagon creates a special medal for drone pilots. Soon receiving military honors might be as easy as adjusting a joystick. The Pentagon is reportedly planning on awarding the pilots of remotely controlled drones. According to officials, defense sources speaking with the Associated Press, future recipients of the new Distinguished Warfare Medal could include the men and women of the U.S. military who control unarmed aerial vehicles, sometimes thousands of miles away in America, accelerating the drone wars. The medal, reports the AP, will be awarded to individuals for extraordinary achievement related to military operation. Unlike other combat medals, winning this one won't require a soldier to ever step away from a control panel, let alone serve directly on the battlefield. The medal could go to service members who never set foot in a combat zone, but launch drone strikes or cyber attacks that can kill or disable an enemy, the AP reports. Now look at the treatment of these operators of death versus veterans who return home to have their guns taken away, be labeled as terrorists with mental disorders, left with basically nothing. And we see, there is obviously a big difference between a drone operator and a combat soldier, whether, no matter what branch of the army you come from. But to give a medal to somebody who kills people they don't know from thousands of miles away, to award that behavior shows the decadence of our society, how disgusting this culture in America is. And I want to get as far away from it as possible.
But yet I think drones have a place in combat. If we were fighting a legitimate war, not a war orchestrated.
There is no more legitimate wars, though.
Okay, but if, for example, if this was drones would have a place.
Let me ask you this: World War II. Okay, you have, and I'm going to use the logic that is used today in the drone wars.
Right.
To kill 10 Nazi soldiers with a drone, they'd blow up a whole concentration camp full of people who were going through the Holocaust. Say there were 50 Nazi soldiers manning a camp of 5,000.
No,
their policy would be destroy the whole camp to kill those 50 people.
But see, they don't have to do that.
But they do.
And it's to me, it is a deliberate act as opposed to collateral damage, that just unnecessary collateral damage. Now this is going to turn into a circular argument here, and it's not going to, seriously, it will, because we're going to come right back to the same point. I understand your point, but I also think at this point that see, it's a lack of morality and a lack of accountability. When was the last time this administration, this regime, was responsible for anything, or accepted responsibility, or was charged?
Well,
with,
what are you going to be
law.
charged for? I mean, the economy's in a recovery. We have Secretary Homeland Security Napolitano saying the U.S. borders have never been stronger.
Right.
We have
no, and I get that, and I think everyone listening gets that. But okay, no, I understand that. Look, let's move on. I want to touch on this because I've been getting emails about this. The United Nations, their gun grab. Folks, have you been hearing about the UN? No. Well, look, the UN, right after Christmas, right around Christmas time, Obama had basically told the United Nations that, and they're going to be gathering, by the way, in New York City next month. I think it's on the 18th of March for the next round of negotiations with only one aim in mind, and that's to stop or to completely eradicate private gun ownership. Actually, it was Christmas Eve last year when the United Nations General Assembly approved a resolution to renew negotiations on the Global Arms Trade Treaty, and of course that measure was approved by a vote of 133-0. 17 countries said no. Now, America kind of signed on to this, at least in theory. They signed on to this. Folks, are you wondering why? You've got a Feinstein bill that's DOA. You've got other federal measures that really won't mean a hill of beans. They don't have much of a chance to pass. Yet you've got states like California and New York passing oppressive laws, but it just seems everything seems out of place. What's going on? Well, there is a clear indication that it's that Obama, this current regime, is going to team up with the national, the United Nations and the national agenda. Well, to do what? Well, to disarm everybody, but specifically Americans, because see, America is the last bastion. You can't. America is the only thing stopping the one world governance / New World Order. It's America that's stopping it. The people of America, not the leaders, the people, because we're armed and we still have certain freedoms. We still have the freedom of speech. We still have, in
free speech zones.
Free speech, yeah, or non-free speech zones. But we still have the ability to own guns, to own conventional firearms.
Yeah, if you submit to a DNA test, a biometric retina scan, a registration, that's what they're working towards.
That's what they're working towards. But see, here's the rub, in my view. The reason things are kind of like cloudy with the federal government is because behind the scenes, behind the curtains, they're working with the United Nations. They're working with the globalists. They're working with the NGOs, the Soroses, the gun ban. Because why? Because we're stopping the agenda, this New World Order. It's us. It's this country.
Yeah, and let me give you an example of what you're talking about on a different, going back to this executive order.
That's
cybersecurity. Every the language in here constantly is talking about making sure that they are consistent with international standards and international law. That is, as I said, a common theme in this executive order, that they want to make sure they are in compliance with international law. Well, we are a sovereign nation.
Yeah, but see, and that's what people. This, I think, is what people really need to. And folks, you can perhaps win an argument, or win not an argument, but the facts are this: who drafted, or who are the people behind those documents you're talking about? Well, the very same people that were in power 30, 40 years ago. You've got Jimmy Carter. Well, wait a minute. You're telling me he drafted this document? Well, no, but his influence is in those executive orders. His influence is in the White House, as is Zbigniew Brzezinski, and as is numerous other people who were in power, the Clintons. Whether you're talking about 1979, don't forget, we had the control of the Panama Canal. And you might think, oh, wait a minute, how'd you get here? Well, the Panama Canal, we had control over that. And it was one of the communist objectives for the United States to cede ownership, authority, control of the Panama Canal to China. And who did that? Carter. So you've got basically communists, and I say communists. But by the way, speaking of China, and not to just pick on Democrats or progressives, whatever, because there is just one party, by the way. October 25th, 1971, Communist China, Red China, at least that's what it was when I was in school, growing up. And anyway, they were granted full membership into the United Nations, and further, they were given a seat on the most powerful Security Council with veto power. And as if to rub it in, the unprecedented move with no legal basis, by the way, our friend and former wartime ally, nationalist China, now referred to as Taiwan, they were booted from the United Nations altogether. Why? Well, we didn't want to offend the communists. So, by the way, I should point out that no other country has ever been booted out of the United Nations except for Taiwan. But on the 1st of January 1979, we, the United States, formally gave diplomatic recognition to China as the official government of China. And so you have both communist goals, one being to grant recognition of Red China and admission of Red China into the UN, accomplished in a period of, 8 years. Well, what does that have to do with today? Well, we didn't get here in a vacuum. We didn't get here. It took a long time for us to get here. That's just one component. And too, did you remember the dust up when and Joe, I'm sure you remember this, the dust up when Alan West talked about the communists in Congress, saying, "Oh, I know, there are 80 people." Oh my goodness. Another goal of communism, which, by the way, is a stepping stone toward the one world governance. And by the way, the Vatican will play a very significant role in this as well. One of the goals there is to not talk about, or certainly not outlaw or otherwise demonize the Communist Party, and we're seeing that in play today. We're seeing Alan West, who said, hey, wait, there are a bunch of globalists and communists in power. Well, you can't say that. But see, I mentioned the Vatican too. What's up with the Vatican? How do they fit in? Folks, the Vatican has got a lot of money. They've got their own banking system, among other things, and they're one of the three biggest world religions. Well, where is, if you believe in Petrus Romanus, if you believe in the St. Malachi prophecies, if you believe in everything that is going on with respect to the Vatican and the Malachi prophecies and Father Malachi Martin, if you believe all of this stuff, where's the Vatican? Where do they have their sights set? Jerusalem. Just as Islam has their sights set on Jerusalem. So you've got three major religions. The Jewish people, the rightful owners of Jerusalem. You've got Islam. And you've got, ultimately, will have, if the prophecies, predictions, or whatever you want to call them are correct, the Vatican setting their sights on Jerusalem. So when this all takes place, when the battle begins for Jerusalem, somebody's going to have to step in and say, you know, these three different religions, we all worship the same God, so you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to settle up here and just kind of combine the religions and scorn the religions, because this, you folks, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, all of you are responsible for all of the evils in the world, and because of that, we're going to have a main religion, just one main religion, and worship the same God, but that God is not going to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No, that God is going to be a false God. So that's why when we talk about the Vatican, when we talk about the Vatican Bank, when we talk about the push for New World Order via the communist agenda, it all ties together and it all fits like puzzle pieces toward the end times. I believe this, and that's why I was so upset, not upset, but so struck by that announcement by Pope Benedict XVI resigning. And that's why I'm very upset with the lack of accountability of anybody in this regime, the lack of moral integrity of anybody in this regime, in this government, understanding what the goals are, what the stakes are. The stakes are very high. And, you know, personally, for each one of us, the stakes, it's our salvation. It's our eternal salvation. Those are the stakes. So,
yeah,
nothing like giving a monologue here.
No, that's okay. Piece of the news I just saw here: Obama placed embargo on press over secret cyber security executive order. President drilled reporters not to cover the secret order. A BuzzFeed reported today that Obama secretly signed a long-awaited executive order on cybersecurity, then issued an embargo on all news organizations not to cover the developments. This is from Infowars.com. The order setting up new programs aimed at stopping online espionage and terrorism was already law of the land, signed by the president, but it was also secret. The document was embargoed until delivery of the president's in the State of the Union address, despite the fact that it had already been signed.
Wow.
The report states that there was a background briefing on the move involving members of the press, explaining that the embargo was not legally binding. BuzzFeed says it chose to break it and report the story because they thought it appropriate to report on the unusual delay. BuzzFeed also revealed that in an email sent out regarding the development, White House spokesman Tom Vetor attempted to explain the secrecy behind the executive order. We wanted to release the executive order early on an embargo basis because the subject matter is complicated and we knew you guys would have questions. It seemed more helpful for the press corps than sending it concurrent with the speech, the email said. Vetter added, this isn't unprecedented. Take example, the sanctioned executive orders. They are signed one day and go into effect at midnight, but are not released until the next day. The secrecy over the executive order sets a precedent, given that it is usually only employed where classified information is concerned. The White House synopsis on the executive order reads as follows. New information sharing programs to provide both classified and unclassified threat and attack information to U.S. companies, The executive order requires federal agencies to produce unclassified reports of threats to U.S. companies and requires the reports to be shared in a timely manner. The order also expands cybersecurity service programs, enabling near real-time sharing of cyber threat information to assist participating in critical infrastructure companies in their cyber protection efforts. And it goes on from there.
I don't think, Joe, have we ever seen this an embargoed executive order to be released as it did after the State of the Union?
I've never heard of that.
I have never heard of it, and because it's so complicated, well, the complication lies in the fact that it's really not complicated. The language is cumbersome, but if you look at what it's doing, it's actually putting the internet under there. It's actually declaring, and I said this earlier, but it was all garbled. It's allowing the Department of Defense, the Army, to address the what exists in the virtual realm can be addressed by the Department of Defense, by the military.
Yeah, critical infrastructure lead agencies. The Department of Homeland Security will be covering information and telecommunications, transportation, which includes aviation, rail, mass transit, waterborne commerce, pipelines, highways,
everything,
trucking, intelligent transportation systems, postal and shipping, emergency services, continuity of government. Department of Treasury will be covering banking and finance. Department of Health and Human Services will be covering public health, including prevention, surveillance, laboratory services, personal health services, food, all
right,
except for meat and poultry. Department of Energy will be covering energy.
Let me just say this. The reason meat and poultry are excluded is they're covered under a separate order, just to be clear. So they're still covered.
Yeah. Department of Agriculture will be covering agriculture and food, including meat and poultry. And the Department of Defense will be covering Defense Industrial Base. And that is straight from the Cybersecurity Strategy Guide that is listed as one of the references to this executive order. Now, we have the Department of Homeland Security leading this new cyber security, National Cybersecurity Executive Order. Now they have a National Cyberspace Security Response System where they are going to see attacks coming or spreading information that indicates an attack is coming. And we have the Department of Homeland Security sitting on top and controlling the internet now. So now, what has the Department of Homeland Security put out? It has put out many guides to law enforcement, listing what they perceive to be as domestic extremists or extremist terrorists in general. Not only that, but listing the alternative media as,
and that's where we fall
extremist.
in.
Listing Christians, listing constitutionalists as domestic extremists. We see how they regulate at the airports. We see how they regulate that there are no-fly lists. We see how they regulate with FEMA. All this bureaucracy is just a bunch of intrusion, and it's just a cover to come into our lives, into our homes more. We saw what Obama plans to do in making sure he becomes a part of your household through the Clean Household Initiative.
But before you go down that road, I just want to make sure people understand this. When you said about, for example, the listing the targets, like constitutionalists and pro-life people, or whatever you said, whatever you named there, or whatever the enemies of the state are, this executive order, and perhaps this is the most important part that people need to understand. This executive order allows the military to address the threat on U.S. soil. Well, there's no differentiation between the threat because it's in cyberspace. So by dragging the Department of Defense into this or the military into this, if you're in Iowa and you pose a significant threat to cybersecurity, the military can come and get you, or take care of. They can deploy theof their forces.
Oh yeah, and
that's what people aren't getting.
Yeah, and this is something for those of you who joined us late. Part of the executive order was Presidential Policy Directive 20, which is a classified presidential directive.
Right.
It establishes strict standards and guidelines, the operations of the federal agencies in confronting threats in cyberspace, and also enables the military to act more aggressively to thwart cyber attacks on the nation's web of government and private computer networks. It establishes, I read that one already, but it goes on to say the policy lays out a process to vet any operations outside the government and defense networks and ensure that U.S. citizens and foreign allies' data and privacy are protected.
Right.
And international laws of war are followed.
Well,
international laws of war.
So,
it also goes on to state the proposal is part of a pending revision of the military standing rules of engagement.
So,
what do they need to change the military rules of engagement for along the lines of cybersecurity, unless they are engaging or refusing to engage against themselves, since we've seen some of the most notable and historic internet attacks take place end up coming from where? Our own government. The Stuxnet virus was an Israeli and U.S. virus.
And how do you think they're going to clean up the bank accounts too?
Right. And the pensions that we talked about earlier in the week. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We'll be right back for hour number 3. We're going to take your calls and hit some more news.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Yes, I am.
Sorry, guys, for the dead air. My father just did 2 minutes live reading a commercial on mute.
I'll tell you something.
Restart.
This is why no one will take me as a talk show host. I got to tell you, people say, "Yeah, you're actually doing that." Okay.
Do the live reads again, because I want to play our intro music for hour number 3.
All right.
All right. Whatever.
This is sorry about that, folks. That was my fault. See,
it's amateur night tonight.
Wow, it sure is. Okay, look, freeze dry guy. Tomorrow, sale ends. Ice cream and cans of chicken and rice. For Hagmann and Hagmann listeners, you got until tomorrow to give freeze dry guy a call. Just go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the banner for freeze dry guy, and the ice cream. Boy, I got to tell you, I've got to taste that. But anyway, they've got freeze dried ice cream and chicken and rice on sale. So check that out. Also, folks, Granlund Firearms, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. Click on the link to Granlund Firearms. That's GRANLUND Firearms.com. If you're in British Columbia, perhaps you just want to stop in and see them. I know we've got a lot of listeners up there. Say hello to Carl and Lori Granlund. They're great people. They've got a whole bunch of inventory waiting for you right now, unlike what's in the United States. You can buy rifles, all sorts of rifles, as a matter of fact, for hunting. They've got all sorts of survival gear, and, of course, a great book written by Carl Granlund. It got me through a couple of days of some nasty flu. Treat by the River, the second edition. Some great pictures in there, some great hunting stories of cougar hunting on Vancouver Island. It is a great book. That's GranlundFirearms.com. GranlundFirearms.com. Sign their guest book if you can't in person, then do it virtually.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Wednesday, February 13th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Those 2 hours went by real fast, and even though it wasn't smooth, we had some sound problems, that was distortion. Then we had our own created sound problems that was created.
My fault.
But still, the show is going on, and it is going smoothly, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Right after the show is over, we will be on with Lori's Talk News Radio from 11 to 12, and that will be directly after our show. We'll hook up with her within, a few minutes after we're done, and we'll be on there till midnight Eastern time.
I'm glad you're here for that, because I might not be able to do that myself. Actually, during the break, folks, Joe had come at me with a pair of scissors and a roll of duct tape.
Well, I thought, you were going to use that machine, for something nefarious, and I was just taking the advice of Homeland Security. I had my scissors and my hole punch, and I was ready to use them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, active shooter scenario in the studios of Hagmann and Hagmann. And, it could have been, but no, it wasn't. It was just me. So let me get this straight. So when that light's red, that means that nobody's hearing anything. That's pretty hard to understand. Sorry, folks.
All right, we have some financial news. Millions improperly claimed U.S. phone subsidies. The U.S. government spent $2.2 billion last year to provide phones to low-income Americans. But a Wall Street Journal review of the program shows that a large number of those who receive the phones have not proved they are eligible to receive them.
Go figure.
$2.2 billion taxpayer-funded money we're talking about there, or used there. Also, priority delivery. This, U.S. to ship all 20 F-16s to Egypt in 2013. Officials said Egypt would receive all of their F-16 Block 52 aircraft this year. They said the arrival of the 4 aircraft marked the first delivery of the F-16s as part of the cooperation between Egypt and the United States. The U.S. delivery of 4 aircraft is a group of 20 F-16s that will arrive in Egypt in the course of the year, the U.S. Embassy said.
Are we insane, Joe?
Are we insane?
No. I guess, is our government insane?
Yes. Yes.
How do we allow this to happen? How does our government allow this to take? The Tea Party.
You asked it right. How do we allow this to happen? Because we are the government. We the people. We as a nation. And as a nation, we are.
That's right. The government works for us.
Destroyed. If you look at the majority of the nation, we are destroyed. We are ignorant. We are illiterate, and we are lazy.
Well, the Department of Education should have. No, wait a second. I don't get this. The Department of Education was created to ensure that the literacy rates and the quality of education would be up to par.
That's their stated goal.
Department of Education. So
well, they're definitely educating the students, just not on.
I gotcha.
Information that needs to be covered, not on true history, not on
right
things that have been taught from whether schoolhouses or parents to their children.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really is. It's mind-boggling to think, Joe, that we can actually send F-16s to the Muslim Brotherhood. But you know what? It makes sense. Doesn't it make sense to you to know that we're doing the bidding? Everything that we're seeing right now, even the green movement, the clean houses, all of this, the clean housing thing, it's all a Saudi agenda. And really quickly, why? How can I say that? Why, for example, aren't we drilling oil wells here or using
really,
why? It's the Saudi Arabian agenda.
Yeah, it's beyond that now. America is gone. It is to be non-recovered, as we a people are dead, because we, as a majority, and I'm not talking about our audience.
No, I know.
I'm talking about the majority of Americans. We care more about the outcome of a football game than the outcome of our nation from tyranny. And that is the truth. People care more about, what they're going to do on the weekends than they care about freedom.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine now.
Care more about how they're going to make themselves happy or be self-serving, self-satisfying, than worrying about their neighbor who might be starving. People care more about drinking beer or watching TV than they do sometimes about their own families. We have a nation where the parents, especially in the major cities, aren't parents only, except that they are the DNA.
They're custodians,
right?
Well, yeah, and they're merely custodians of their children.
Live in a godless nation, and we are seeing the fruits of that nation, unfortunately, in our time right now, and it is only going to get worse as we see the nation becomes more decadent. And one of the things that disturbed me about the Pope stepping down is I don't know if anybody saw, I think Diane Sawyer did an interview. It was on ABC News. I caught part of it where they talked about, well, now the Catholic Church needs to consider changing. They need to have women as priests, and they need to embrace homosexuality, and they need to, I mean, it was just like what you would hear Obama saying, you know, on basically about the Boy Scouts. It's time that they get with society and change.
Well,
and it's
yeah,
you know, it's frightening to hear them say that.
Well, did you hear? Speaking of the Catholic Church, did you hear? And folks, I don't know whether you heard this or not, but the Pope in his final homily, his final sermon, he was pretty blunt with people. Did you hear about this, Joe?
I heard what did he say? Because I read it, but I don't remember.
Okay, he called for the church to overcome individualism and rivalry, saying that they were only for those who have distanced themselves from their faith. And it was a standing room only, a crowd of a bunch of dignitaries, clergy, spectators, and from the devout to the curious. And he did kind of really deliver a blow to the people who were talking about divisiveness. But then you've got to understand, too, and lest we forget, this is the same Pope through his encyclical back in 2009 talked about succumbing or agreeing to or working with a one world single governance system, and talking about Marxism and such. So, you know, it's an interesting eclectic thing taking place here. And also, by the way, Joe, the Vatican, the one thing too, I'd mentioned the Vatican Bank, but there's also the leaks by the Pope's former butler of documents.
Yeah.
Did you read about that? Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And that's not the only scandal they were talking about. There were sexual scandals being referred to, monetary scandals.
The money's a big thing. Money's a huge thing.
Yeah. And those continue to plague, you know, those same issues plague Catholic churches, Protestant churches, Baptist churches.
Yep.
It's not that it's exclusive to one denomination. It's that the decay of society has reached to all areas of society. We got, 45 minutes left. 661-244-9839. We're going to take some phone calls in the next few minutes, but a few pieces of Earth information and weather and solar news. One, the UN has released a forecast on the solar maximum this year, 2013, and the United Nations is taking steps to organize an international response to a stormy space weather. Now, that's at spaceweather.com. I'm not going to go any further than that. But one thing, or two things I do want to draw your attention to. One being that asteroid 2012 DA14, February 5th. They've bumped up the size. It was like 57 meters. Now it says it's 65. And also there is a few extra near-Earth objects coming right around that same day. So they miscalculated the distance from Earth it was going to pass through, then changed that in the last month. Now they've changed the size of the object, only by a few meters, but...
Well, but what has Stan Deo said about this? Because I would turn to him before I would turn to anyone else in terms of...
About a month ago, I emailed him with the new data, and he said it's still not going to hit Earth, but it is closer than the other numbers were. And there are some satellite and communication pieces orbiting Earth that are in possible danger of being taken out.
All right. And so it hasn't changed since yesterday, basically. We're still looking, except for the size, which they seem to have increased.
Yeah, the size has increased, and I mean, I can understand that. You're dealing with a rock in outer space flying, towards Earth.
Yeah.
people make mistakes and miscalculate, but hopefully they're not miscalculating on the trajectory or where they expect this thing, how far they expect this thing to miss us by. But also, I heard about these very low pressure systems coming up from the north or from the south, going to create some more nor'easters, some more of these big winter storms, like up to three or four winter storms are being created or are coming up the East Coast.
Being created, right?
I said being created by man or by the Lord, are coming. And one of the signatures is, and this is what stuck out to me, is the how low the pressure is in these areas where these storms are starting. It's not natural, from what I understand about weather. And I'm not a meteorologist, but I know what the pressure is, and I know when it drops below a certain point, like it did with Hurricane Sandy, like it just did with this last nor'easter, and like it's showing it's going to do here in the next week or two. Expect to see some more huge storms on the Northeast.
I got to tell you, Gary Bell, A View from Space, the Spaceman, AM 640 Toronto, last Saturday, he airs a show every Saturday. I talk about him a lot. He was talking about the weather up in Toronto when he was doing a show, and about how he was getting dumped on. They were getting dumped on. I don't know. He was talking in centimeters, so the only thing I know is there's 2.5 centimeters to an inch, but it sounded like probably 1.5 feet of snow they were getting. But he was talking about chemtrails, what they're spraying having an effect on the weather patterns, and of course, the snow. But now I'm not sure about the low pressure systems. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Perhaps would it be a HARP situation, or would it be something else, some sort of other directed energy type system, or what would be? How could you create a low pressure system by man? How could man create a low pressure system? Now I'm sure I'm going to get emails telling me, but it's interesting. Look, are we going too far out in the weeds? Are we going too far out? No. Okay. All right. But because I think when we look at all of this, if things like this are planned, well, what's the end game objective, at least for the low pressure systems? Is it for additional property destruction and imposition? Is it to keep us off? What's the end game objective for this?
I don't know, but I just wanted to bring it to people's attention because it is there, and we need to understand that there is something going on with the weather, and if it's being manipulated for whatever reasons or purposes, then that's what it is. But something's going on, and we are going to see storms, according to what I have read. A little piece of good news here, and then we'll go to the phone calls. 336 county sheriffs will defend the Constitution. I'll post a link in the chat to this story. For those of you listening archive, just search 336 county sheriffs will defend the Constitution. And there's a list of his states and which counties their sheriffs will be supporting the Constitution.
But how many counties are there in America? And that seems like a pretty small number,
Yeah.
I just want to say this, Laura. Thank you for the email. Our show is kind of like a box of chocolates. You just never know what to expect, but yet we're always fun.
Sadly, I'm looking at this list, and in our state, our city or our county is not on here.
Wow.
We're gonna have to give the sheriff a call.
Yeah, find out what the deal is with respect to that. Is our state on there? Do we have anybody representing us in the state? Probably not.
Our state. We have 5 counties.
All right. So we have, and I think this is something we all should do, because you find out. Let's find out where your sheriff stands on this Second Amendment issue. It's not really a gun ban issue. It's a Second Amendment issue. Find out where your sheriff is. And I believe there are sites on the internet where there are letters already made up where you can grab them and copy them and just insert the appropriate information before you print them and set them off. So, but we need to do that.
One last piece of news, then right to the phones. G7 fails to diffuse currency tensions. An attempt to soothe global currency tensions backfired on Tuesday as a joint statement by the world's richest nations roiled the markets. The group of 7 nations took the unusual step of issuing a public statement to address rising concerns over a fresh round of global currency wars.
So here we go.
This is from the Financial Times. The yen initially fell as the statement appeared to support Japan's effort to reinvigorate growth, but the currency later rebounded after a G7 official was quoted in Washington as saying the statement had been misinterpreted and was instead intended as a warning to Japan. British officials who brokered the statement, meanwhile, insisted that the statement was not about an individual country or currency. Japan's monetary policy has become the focus of the global currency tension ahead of the meeting of G20 finance ministers and central bankers later this week in Moscow. Expectations that Tokyo will take a firm action to combat deflation have led to sharp sell-off of the Japanese yen, alarming the country's trading partners. Brainerd, the top U.S. Treasury official for international affairs, sent the yen plummeting on Monday evening after commenting publicly that the U.S. supported the effort to reinvigorate growth and end the deflation in Japan. The dollar gained further ground at the G7 after the statement was published in London on Tuesday. The statement from finance ministers and the central bank governors in the U.S., Japan, UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Canada said they would consult closely on any action in foreign exchange markets. We reaffirm that our fiscal and monetary policies have been and will remain oriented towards meeting our respective domestic objectives using domestic instruments, and that we will not target exchange rates, the ministers and governors said. We agreed that excessive and volatility and disorderly movements in exchange rates can have adverse implications for economic and financial stability. Now, just one point I'll make and we'll go right to the phones. If you think our economy can't be affected by Germany's economy or by Canada's economy, as someone said it before, our economies are now so interconnected that if one falls, they could all fall, as it is through one central bank they all work from.
Yeah, it's the central banks that we are beholden to. It's the in this country, of course, it's the Federal Reserve and the central banks, and of course, folks, you know this. We don't have to get into it.
Let's go to the phones. I want to thank those of you for holding. We're going to go to area code at 205 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Gentlemen, good evening. How are you?
Very well.
Hey, this is Ken in Birmingham. I know this is off topic. I'll be very quick and brief, but I don't know if you've changed anything on your equipment, made any changes, switch settings, whatever, but your audio is sounding much better tonight than it has in the past. Have you changed anything?
We went from using our studio equipment to low-tech equipment.
Actually,
really?
a couple of strings and a couple of tin cans, and we are...
Well, I was going to write you a real long email since I'm an audio geek and make a couple of suggestions to you. I've noticed by listening on the podcast that almost always all of the callers sound very good and very clear, and your audio cuts when you play an audio cut from some politician or something. That sounds good and clear, and the top of the hour, little bumper there that you play sounds good. But you two guys, your mics or whatever are distorted for some whatever reason into probably the mixing board that you're using. So it seems to be something on your mics or your mic inputs on your mixer board.
But right now, or
no, in the past. Yeah, tonight It sounds very good.
Yeah, the mixer board has been giving us trouble, and it's not. Boy. Yeah, I know. Oh, well, obviously you didn't hear my, earlier.
I just tuned in, so I missed any previous thing you might have mentioned about it. Sorry.
Yeah, I sounded like I had a. I won't get into it. It's too painful. It's too painful for me. No, but thank you for that. Yeah, we're trying to make it so that people won't, it won't be painful for people to listen. So, thank you for noticing.
Okay,
appreciate that.
Thank you and good night. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks for the call, Ken.
Yeah.
All right, area code 412. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe, Doug, how's everybody up there doing?
Very good. How are you doing down there?
I'm just very upset with what's been going on here, especially this news with the church here. I got a source that told me that they forced him to resign and things like that. Am I on the right track or not?
Well, you bring up something interesting, and this is something I haven't mentioned yet because I haven't looked into it enough yet, but there was the 900th anniversary celebration of the Knights of Malta on Saturday in the Vatican, St. Peter's Square there. Now, I don't know what influence they have, if any, over the seat of the Pope, but that's something that I'm trying to find other sources of information on.
Well, a sister, Charlotte Wells, did you get any information from her testimony?
No.
I'll send you up a link, Doug.
All right.
It's bone crushing. Definitely bone crushing. Just, I'm devastated. It's just one thing after another. Well, everything that's going on.
Steve, look, I don't want you. And here's the thing: we can get so wrapped up in these things, and these obviously, the Pope's resignation. I mean, the first Pope to resign since Gregory the 12th, I believe, 600 years ago almost, 1415. This is a kind of a checkpoint in history. This is certainly something that we should pay attention to. But you know what? We know how the story ends, don't we? I mean, you sound so down tonight. Man, you can't be down. You know what? You sound well. Of course, what am I saying? Sure, you can be down, but I don't want you to be down because we know we are going to be victorious in the end.
Yeah, but it doesn't. My research, Doug, is telling me that he was forced to resign. They were going to close the church down. They were going to attach all the assets. Okay, so what's that telling you? They're going to attach the assets of the church? Wow, can you imagine that? Like I said, I'll send you this link up, and like I said, it's bone crushing. It's just wow. And with everything else, it's not that I'm down. I know what I got to do personally, and hit the knees and just wow, I just don't know what else to say. My main reason to call you was, has the eagle landed?
You know what? I was thinking about you today. The eagle has yet to land, but fear not, because I did check with the post office, and they said we are rearranging our facility. Now it could be here. We're not sure, but
it is there.
Yeah, I was telling the person behind the counter. I said, look, I've talked to the gentleman. I said, I know it's here. And the woman behind the counter was very nice, but very flustered. She said, I'll look for the ticket for the box. She said, I'll be sure to look for it. And I said, look, I'm looking for this because it's a time-sensitive issue. And but she said, just give me another couple of days, and so. But that's, by the way, folks, these people, Obamacare, same type of deal. This is the efficiency we're going to be seeing in Obamacare. So, Steve, hang in there. I will let you know when the eagle has the firm footing in the studio of Hagmann and Hagmann?
It's been sitting in.
Yeah, I think you said Saturday.
It's been sitting there since in Erie at 8:41 February 6th. It's been sitting in Erie. So
okay, you know what? When you if you have the and I don't want to make.
I'm looking at it on my screen right now. I got the tracking number and everything, and I'll send you up an email.
Just forward it to me, and I'll take it in tomorrow when I see the people tomorrow, and we'll take care of that. And I'll let you know when the Eagles got the claws firmly planted in the studio here.
Well, once you see what it is, you'll get a kick out of it. Because what I'm saying, the Eagles landed. That's a clue.
All right, my friend. All right.
All right. You take care of each other, and God bless you guys. On the Pete Santelli show, they've been streamlining your show.
Yeah.
And it sounds fantastic. It comes on 2 or 3 times during the day after his show, sometimes before his show, and things like that. I just wanted to, keep you updated on that. So.
Well, thanks. Thanks, but after my behavior tonight, they might just decide to yank us because I can't. I'm a bear with buttons. But thank you.
I'll let you guys go, and Joe, take care of your dad, and say a prayer for me because I've been very sick here. I got some bad news with my health, so like I said, I don't think I'll be around very much longer anyway. So it doesn't matter to me one way or another. So you guys be good.
All right, my friend. And you know what?
I'll talk to you on the Reebok.
All right. We're all going to pray for Steve. Folks, say a prayer for this gentleman. He's a Vietnam vet. He's served our country fearlessly. He's impaired and he's not well. And I'll tell you what, prayers work. His name is Steve. And if you can all just say a prayer for Steve's health and Steve's mental health and state of mind, too, because that's all part of it.
Yeah.
So please, say a prayer.
Thanks for the call, Steve. God bless you. Take care. All right. I think he dropped off.
Yeah, he did.
We're going to move right along here. Area code 303. Thanks for your patience. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
In the name of Christ Jesus, bless the Hagmans and all the listeners.
Amen. Amen.
For that last caller, in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray for his health. I hope that he can find the Gerson therapy, and that might be able to turn around his health situation.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be corresponding with him, and just to follow up to make sure that he knows that he's got a lot of support in our listening audience and a lot of prayers. So thank you, caller, for that.
Kind of on topic, I wanted to speak of how the Lord works in mysterious ways. Lady Gaga, Satan's lapdog, has come down with lupus.
Oh, really?
I saw that. I had to cancel 4 performances.
Oh, she's afraid for her career. Her career of crawling on the ground and flopping around for Satan.
Yeah, she should be afraid for her soul.
Absolutely.
Lupus. Now, obviously, no one wants to wish ill on others, but perhaps we should pray for not only her physical health, but also her spiritual health as well. I mean, prayers are always a good thing. My goodness, though.
We should also give a prayer out for this donor guy who died. We don't know any of the real details around this, and we never will. If that's him that died in the cabin, I send blessings to him, and I hope that God forgives him for what he did.
Do you know, Joe, that, and caller, do you know that when do you think, and caller, you might know this, and Joe, you might know this, when do you think that he left the police force? Didn't that make it sound like it was like yesterday or like last week? I mean, really close? It was 2009.
And they reopened the investigation. Also, there are some questions. They said there were 2 hostages in the cabin, but they only found one escaped. apparently, from what I heard. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
But they only found one body in the cabin that was burned up, but they found a wallet that wasn't burned up with his ID in it, apparently.
I got breaking news on that. They found actually not only his wallet but the passport of Hani Hanjour.
Were the 9/11 flight black boxes there?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the black boxes, and you remember when Geraldo went to look in Capone's vault? They found actually Capone documents there too.
And Hoffa had to be there as well.
Yeah, look, I call her out. I'm sorry, man.
Elvis running out the back of the building. There's footage of Elvis escaping the scene.
Well, we don't know anything, do we?
We didn't get into that tonight because there's a lot of conflicting reports I saw. Aside from all the same but differently worded mainstream reports, so Friday, as we have Tom Horn on tomorrow. Friday is a day that we will be able to get into that more.
Yeah. And caller, do you think? By the way, does he fit a pattern too? Have you been seeing a pattern of these shooters, 30s? I don't know. I just feel something's just not right there.
Well, look how they hyped him up. They said he supported Pierce Morgan. He was for gun control, and then they're going to take it and ramp it up. He's a vet. He's a cop. He's somebody that we swore to protect us, and he didn't. In fact, he waged war with a manifesto, mind you, a manifesto. And, Doug, I feel that same unsettling feeling hearing that word, manifesto, because we're in a lot of manifestos right now. We have a centralized bank. We have socialized health care. What's next for communist, Obamunist dictator?
Oh, how true is that?
Gun disarmament.
Yep.
And here in Colorado, I believe it was the day before yesterday, our worthless politicians passed a limitation on extended magazines, 15. That's going to put Magpul in a situation where they're going to have to leave Colorado. I'm not exactly sure how many jobs they employ here, but it's several thousand. I hope you liberal communists are getting everything you want by systematically destroying the greatest nation on the world next to Israel, God's pearl.
Boy, I'm with you 100% there. And by the way, that manufacturer that's based in Colorado can do the same thing. There was a manufacturer, I think, based in New York, perhaps, an ammunition manufacturer who's refused to sell any ammunition to the state of New York, the federal law enforcement, the federal and state law enforcement.
And they said something like, because they're a criminal organization under the RICO Act, they won't sell it to them.
Yeah, the president had the president of this corporation had made a pretty nifty statement. I can't remember the name of the company offhand, but I was saying that they were organized RICO under the RICO Act, right?
Just another thing about Dorner, isn't it funny how Drudge Report's now saying his mother was spotted drinking wine and eating chips while watching the standoff? This is just another fact of disinformation to whitewash what this really is. They declared him the first domestic terrorist. He's the first to be tracked by drones, and yet another horrible building burned down with somebody. Now, how can we let our police burn down a house with somebody inside? One man. This is amazing. Just like the chicken guy in, I forget which state it was, but they burned his house down too.
Exactly. Now, during one of the more recent press conferences, didn't the spokesperson, and I'm not sure which agency it was for, they said that they pushed him back in the house, Dorner, they pushed him back in the house when it was on fire? Well, I mean, they didn't say when it was on fire, but they pushed him back in the house. An interesting choice of words.
How could they have gotten that close when it sounded like he had fully automatic firearms?
Yeah, I don't know. And I do know that there are more questions right now than answers. We're going to be looking into this a lot more closely over the next couple of days.
What we realize from this is we cannot trust our government. Not one bit. Not 1%. All we can trust is Jesus Christ. Trust not in man, trust in God. Fear not, God is in control.
Amen.
Bless the two of you in Jesus' name. You are watchmen. You are doing good work. Can't wait to hear you guys on with Steve and Tom tomorrow. Bless you both. Bless all the listeners, and bless those that know not what they do.
Amen, my friend. God bless. Thanks for your call.
Bye-bye.
Joe,
yeah, that was Scott, and thanks for your call, Scott.
You're gonna. I know for tomorrow you're gonna duct tape my hands to the chair and the buttons down where they should be, aren't you?
Yeah, we're gonna make sure you are in your high chair with all the proper restraints to make sure we don't have any more complications, at least any that we can avoid. Individually.
Talk about operator error, man. That's.
All right, we're going to move right along here. Area code 928. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, you two. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Hi, this is Liz in Arizona.
Hi, Liz.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, but there's been something pressing for a couple of days. I felt the need to call in tonight and share something with you and all the listeners. First of all, also to thank the two of you for what you're doing. And it's been so refreshing, as so many people have said, to hear some truth and two men that are after God's heart. And I feel a strong need to say that that's where we all need to stay right now. That there's just going to be one news story after another that's going to keep us confused. We'll never know the answers. And I think we have to get to where we don't pay attention anymore because they're all distractions, and it's unsettling, and that's not where the Lord wants us to be. And,
wow, you sound like Joe. Okay. Joe was saying almost word for word what you were saying earlier today or yesterday.
Wow, because I just tuned into the show about 45 minutes ago, so I've missed most of it tonight. But when I first really dedicated my life to the Lord, it was in 2001. And it was probably not more than about 2 or 3 months after I was baptized that I had what I call a visitation. And, you know, this stuff doesn't happen to me, and I'm not one of those people that has, like, a lot of prophetic dreams or anything, but I guess there's some people that need to hear this tonight, so I'm going to tell the story real quick. I was in our local Walmart, which is in a small town, so it wasn't a super Walmart, just a small one, and I went to get in the checkout line to pay for my things, but there were two people in front of me. One was an old man, and then behind him was a lady that I knew. And so she and I were chatting for a minute, and she said to me, she says, Liz, look at this man in front of us here. She said, he is just totally covered with cancer. So, yeah, I looked at him, and he did. He had the black patches all over his face and hands, but he was dressed so nice. He looked so tidy, and all I could do was just look down at my cart, and I just said, Lord, please help this man. And anyway, he left. My friend paid for her things, and next thing I know, that man came back into the store. And he walked past all the other checkouts and every other person, but he walked directly up to me. And he put his hand kind of on my arm, and he says, excuse me, but I need to tell you something. And I thought, well, he's going to tell me a joke. You know, as guys will do sometimes, old men like to joke. He looked at me very serious, but his eyes were this glistening, sparkling blue. And I knew there was something not the same as usual. And he said, listen to me carefully. He says, I'm a messenger. He says, you must stay very close to the Lord. Stay very, very close. He says, there's not much time. And I looked at him again, but his eyes were smiling, and I nodded, and he nodded, turned around and left, and I never saw him again.
This was not a vision. This happened?
Yeah. Yep.
And how long ago did this happen?
2001. And what's this? Oh, it would be about 12 years now, yeah. And boy, has that stuck with me all these years. And I just knew that it was probably because I was praying for him, that he was probably an angel.
Did he, were the, and forgive me for asking this or if I somehow missed this, but would he have heard you offering up prayers for him?
No. No, he was too far away, and I was mumbling under my breath.
Wow.
No, yeah, he couldn't have heard me. Even my friend next to me, I know she couldn't hear me. And then after he left, she looked at me and she said, "What was that all about?" And I said, "I'll tell you another time."
Boy.
But it's, you know, as things are now, I keep remembering what he said, and I've been led to a scripture as well to leave you with, and then I'll get off here because I know there's not much time. But I've been preparing for things for a few years now, and most of my family thought I was crazy, and so what, you know, okay. And now they don't quite think I'm as crazy, but the Lord kind of told me about a year ago, he says, "Stop. Now you just stay close to me." And led me to Isaiah 26:20. And it says, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast." And I had heard the words several times last summer, "Be prepared to get in your ark."
Okay.
So whoever that is for tonight, I hope it gives somebody comfort and encouragement, because he's going to carry us. Noah and his family had an ark, and we will too, in whatever way the Lord gives it to us. So we don't have to fear. We can't get wrapped up in what's going on in the world, because we're not of this world anyway.
That's right.
Wow.
So,
wow, what a fantastic story. And that would stick with me for a long time. Holy cow.
It won't ever go away. It was awesome. It was just an awesome experience, and I felt so blessed and humbled. And,
but,
man. You know, only a few times that I have shared that, but it's almost like the Lord wanted me to wait for a long time before I really did share it with anybody.
Well, God bless you for sharing it. I'm sure there are people out there, or person or people that needed to hear that.
I hope so.
I know there are.
I hope so. And, you know, there's probably been many others have a similar experience. You know, these things happen and you don't ever think, well, it's not going to happen to me. But it does.
Wow.
And we just have to, the Bible says we entertain angels unawares.
That's true.
And I think that's what he was. So be of good
Wow.
cheer, everyone. You know, we're headed into some real stuff. Buckle your seatbelts, hang on, and, you know, we really don't know what it's going to look like, feel like, but I think we're going to see some awesome supernatural things that God will do to carry us through this. And I do believe people that are afraid of, like, being tortured or whatever, I believe God has the power, if we trust him, to not let us feel the kind of pain we normally would.
Yeah, and also, what is the pain of a short time of torture worth when thinking about your eternal soul? I mean, I would endure as much torture as I needed to ensure that my soul went to heaven.
That's right.
I would be You're supposed to be not only forgiving of the people who persecute you, but joyful that you would be giving yourself over for His name's sake, as He says in the Bible, that they will turn you over.
That's
for
right.
His name.
That's right. I even have a couple of my own daughters that I would not be surprised if they turn me in at some point. I would not be surprised, but I'm fully prepared for it at this point. I pray for them and hope that they'll realize that, they may not. It might happen to a lot of us. But, God knows each one of us. He knows what each of us can endure. He already has it planned out for us. There's certain people I believe He's going to leave here that He knows can endure this. Those that He knows can't or have done enough, I think He'll take them home. He knows.
He does know, and I think about that, Joe. I know, Joe, you think about that, and how much more we can do, and we should be doing than we're doing right now. There's always room for more. But
that's right.
Wow, and that's why it's so important for everyone tonight. To definitely. I mean, time is so short. Hit your knees, repent, and pray.
It hits so fast that we will be amazed. And we think maybe a year or two. Well, when it hits, it's just going to be like right now.
That's right.
And we're going to have no doubts that it's here.
That's very true.
Anyway, you two take care of yourselves. Stay in good health. God bless you. And God bless all the listeners. Love you all.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Take care.
Wow, Joe.
What a great call. We got a few minutes left. We're going to squeeze in one more call, area code 503. 503. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, Brothers Hagmann. I'm a new listener. And I wanted to... thank you. I appreciate that last scripture that was shared by the last caller, Isaiah 26:20. I think that's probably a pre-trib rapture verse in the Old Testament. But I have another verse I wanted to share, just because earlier, I think it was you, Douglas, that mentioned that we should keep focused on our hope. I listen to a lot of programs like yours and study Bible prophecy and see all the evil things that are coming and very soon. But it's good to remember that the Son of Righteousness will arise after the darkest hour on the earth. And John 16:21, just one verse, if I could read that.
Sure.
It says, a woman, when she is in travail, has sorrow because her hour is come. But as soon as she is delivered of the child, she remembereth no more the anguish for joy that a man is born into the world. So that's much like the joy that comes after the travail, which is like the birth pangs, the sorrows that are coming. And I don't think I'm not among those who think the birth pangs have begun yet, but it is. It's good to remember how sure and good our hope is.
Well, I'm like a woman who's never had a child or been pregnant.
Yeah.
I have no clue what a birth pang is. So I can't comment on that. But I just have a feeling that time is short relative to things. I don't know.
Yeah, birth pang is a very rich, meaningful metaphor. I think that the fact that they are, and I studied it a little bit when I went through Matthew 24, and I think that the fact that true birth pangs have an increased intensity, frequency, and duration may give us a clue about the pestilence, famines, earthquakes, and wars that are coming. It'll be clear to us, I think, that there are birth pangs when they really do start, just because of their increasing frequency and intensity and duration.
Well, sir, you have the honor of being the last caller of our show. We are up against the close of our show. I want to thank you so much for your call and your very, very good words of advice and of scripture.
Yeah, God bless you, caller, and I'm glad you're listening, and please call back again.
Yes, sir.
When we have more time.
I will. I'm a new listener. I will call back again. Thank you.
What's your first name?
Terry.
Okay.
All right.
Terry,
you've got an open invitation anytime, my friend.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, have more to say. All right. Thanks.
All right. Joe,
that's
fantastic. Wow.
Even though we were out of order today with our sound and with our mute buttons, and
sometimes it's just
it was a great show.
Just a circus in here, and
yeah, I mean, but it went well, guys. Tomorrow, 9 p.m.
to midnight.
Tom Horn and Steve Quayle.
Talk about a historic program. That's going to be a very historic program.
Yes. Don't want to miss it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great night.
Good night.